Hey there, I'm Jared, and my topic is the enforcement of required vaccinations, and the case is Brown versus Smith. And now for the case background. This happened in 2018 in California. The plaintiffs are Sharon Brown, Sarah Lucas, Danielle Selden, Serge Eustache, Tricia Eustache, and Nikki Jensen. These plaintiffs are described in the case as parents with sincerely held philosophic, conscientious, and religious objections to state-mandated immunization. The defendant in the case is Karen Smith, the director of the California Department of Public Health. The plaintiffs in this case are interested in preserving autonomy over whether or not they should vaccinate their children. The defendant in the case is interested in increasing vaccination rates in order to protect the greater population. The recent amendment in question here removed the personal beliefs exemption, and this allowed people such as the plaintiffs to not vaccinate their children. Under the new amendment, people previously under the personal beliefs exemption would no longer be exempt and would no longer be allowed to attend public school. The plaintiffs argued that this was a violation of free exercise of religion, the right to attend a public school, equal protection, and due process. The enforcement of required vaccines is important because vaccination policy affects everyone, directly or indirectly. An example of this would be in a group of 10 people, if 8 of them get a vaccine for any disease, one of those people is immunocompromised and can't get a vaccine, and then this last person actually has the disease. Just because the person that's immunocompromised is surrounded by so many vaccinated people, the chances of them getting the disease are reduced, and this is known as herd immunity. Vaccines are also controversial because some people don't trust them. In this case, the plaintiffs don't trust vaccines. And vaccines are also very important in considering our current world events. And just a question to think about during the presentation, do you think people will be required to get the COVID vaccine? My thesis is that the principle of autonomy protects a person's right to self-determination. In the case of vaccines, however, utility states that the greatest good for the greatest number of people takes precedent. Utility needs to be accompanied by justice to ensure that all parties involved in the vaccination policy are treated without bias. The main conflicting principles are autonomy and utility, and there's a side conflict concerning justice as well. So in this case, if we were to base our argument solely on autonomy, the parents would have authority over whether or not their children would receive vaccines. But if we were to base our argument on utility, we'd find that the benefits of herd immunity to the greater population outweigh the individual desires to not vaccinate. And the principle of justice says that all people should be treated equally. So the question is the law just if the people's access to public education that they pay for through taxes is being restricted based on their vaccination status? So now for some laws, codes, and duties that apply to this case. First off, we have patients have the right to informed consent, and this includes the right to refuse a treatment. We also have, according to our textbook in section 4.7, there's a little statement that says, in general, codes of professional ethics impose upon professionals the duty to obey the law. And again, in section 4.9, we have something similar. It says the protection of the public from communicable diseases, for example, is occasionally in conflict with the medical duty of confidentiality and with patient autonomy. So I interpret this as sometimes the law and the government requires medical professionals to do things that they maybe don't quite agree with ethically. but their ethical codes mandate them to obey the law. And now from a past court case, in 1890, the California Supreme Court upheld a law that required schools to exclude children if they were not vaccinated against smallpox. And now going back to this new law, the Senate Bill number 277, physicians are only allowed to provide exemptions to children if the doctor considers the immunizations to be dangerous to this child. So, for example, if the child was immunocompromised and the vaccine would be unsafe, that would be an acceptable exemption under the new law. So for the outcome of the case, the court dismissed the plaintiff's challenge, which means they sided with utility on this. And I agree with the court ruling, although I think that modifications can be made to better represent all the ethical principles. In specific, I'm talking about justice also being represented. So now for the proposed solution, we're going to start off by saying that education is technically not a fundamental right under the United States Constitution, although the Supreme Court did say that education is a fundamental interest. So I think a better way to deal with a case like this would be imposing a fine for refusing to vaccinate without a medical reason. So I think this is better than denying access to public education, which is very important, and also these people are paying for public education through their taxes already. So I don't think they should be barred from using that service. In a previous case called Jacobson versus Massachusetts in 1905, the court upheld a law that allowed towns to fine those that refused to vaccinate, considering the vaccines were provided to the people for free, and then if they still refused, then they were fined. And I think this could be a good idea because then the fines can contribute to paying for more vaccines for more people. So in conclusion, this case is one of the few instances I can think of where autonomy is not given precedence in a case. In this scenario, utility, when considering the health and the benefit of the greater community, is more significant and outweighs the individual's desires, as shown by this picture. Thank you.